"Please kill me," she whispered, her voice raw and broken, as the desert wind dragged her words into the endless horizon. The woman stood barefoot on the cracked earth of the Arizona plains, her torn calico dress clinging to skin scorched by sun and bruised by cruelty. Her name was Evelyn Harper, a 30-year-old who should have been in the prime of her life, but instead wore the look of someone far older, eyes dulled by sorrow, lips cracked from thirst, shoulders sagging beneath invisible weight. A faint trail of blood marked her steps, trickling from the solace of her feet where sharp stones had cut her flesh. Every breath rattled as if she carried grief itself inside her lungs. The land around her was a barren sea of gold and rust. The sun, hanging low and merciless, scorched the wide plains, painting the sky in shades of copper. Heat shimmered off the horizon, distorting everything in waves of fire. Even the mesquite trees bent as though they, too, could not withstand the weight of the desert. Somewhere in the distance, a lone hawk circled, its shadow gliding across the ground like a curse. Before her stood a man unlike any she had ever seen. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his chest bare and bronzed from years beneath the sun. His long black hair, streaked with dust, moved with the hot wind. Around his neck hung tribal jewelry, beads, bone, and silver charms that clinked softly with each breath. In his hand he held a spear, the blade polished and sharp, glinting with the dying light of day. But it was not the weapon that struck Evelyn, it was his eyes. Dark, steady, and unreadable, they locked on hers with the weight of mountains. They held no cruelty, no mocking, no thrill at her desperation. Only stillness, only thought. Her knees nearly gave way as she sank into the dust. The grit stung her cuts, but she hardly felt it. Her body was beyond pain, numbed by loss. She lifted her trembling hands, palms out as though in surrender, and repeated, more hoarsely this time, "Please, kill me. End this." Her voice cracked into the dry air. It sounded so pitiful she almost hated herself for speaking it aloud. But the words had clawed their way out of her, uncontrollable, born of agony too great to carry. The warrior did not move. The wind picked up between them, tugging at his hair, carrying the scent of sagebrush and dust. He studied her as though weighing something deeper than flesh and bone, something buried in the soul. "Why do you ask for death?" He finally spoke, his voice low, accented, yet steady as stone. Evelyn's lips trembled. She thought she might choke on the truth, but what use was silence now? Because everything I loved is gone. My husband gunned down before my eyes. My son, her throat caught like a rope tightening. They took him, raiders. They burned our home, left me with nothing. Nothing but this hollow. She pressed a hand against her chest, shaking. I don't want to walk this earth without them. I can't. The tears came then, unbidden. They blurred the horizon until the desert itself looked like it wept with her. She dropped her head into her hands, sobbing into the dust. For a long moment, silence lay heavy. Even the hawk overhead seemed to still its wings, circling quietly as if waiting to see what the warrior would do. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate, until his shadow fell across her. She braced herself, half expecting the spear to thrust forward, to pierce her chest and release her from the misery gnawing her heart. But instead, the spear lowered its tip, pressing into the earth beside her, not into her flesh. He crouched down, so close she could see the faint scars etched across his skin. The life of a man who had fought battles she could not imagine. "You ask for the end," he said, his eyes never leaving hers, "but you do not understand what it is you ask." Evelyn shook her head violently. Dust sprang from her tangled hair. "I do. I've lived it. I've lost it. There's nothing left." He raised a hand, not harsh, but firm, cutting her words short. His voice dropped lower, steadier, carrying weight like an oath. "The desert is cruel. It takes, it burns. It buries, but it never asks if you are ready. You say you have nothing, yet your blood still runs, your breath still comes. You have more than the dead. You have choice. The words pierced her in a way no blade could. She stared at him, bewildered, anger sparking faintly through her despair. Choice? What choice? To wander until I collapse and feed the vultures? To live in a world where my child screams for me and I can't answer? His eyes flickered, then something human, something remembered, something painful. He pressed his palm into the earth between them. The land still breathes, he said softly. As long as it does, so do you. The hawk cried out above, a shrill echo across the plains, and Evelyn realized the truth. This man, this warrior, would not give her death. He had chosen something far more dangerous. Mercy, she would soon learn, could change everything. The silence between them stretched, thick as the desert heat. Evelyn's plea still lingered in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Her body sagged where she knelt, trembling hands pressed to the ground, expecting the spear's strike at any moment. But none came. The warrior did not move with the swiftness of execution. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as though her words had raised a question he had never been asked. His eyes narrowed, not in cruelty, but in contemplation. For all the dust and hunger hollowing her frame, Evelyn felt those eyes pierce through. Her misery, as if they searched for the ember of something she believed long dead. You ask for the end, he said at last, his English broken but firm, each word carved with the weight of someone who had learned the tongue not from books, but from necessity. But the end is not a gift, it is a thief. Once it comes, there is no return. Evelyn's chest tightened. The sun above seemed hotter, the wind sharper, scraping her skin raw. She forced herself to meet his gaze. I don't care. Don't. You understand? My husband is gone. Shot like an animal in front of me. My son. Her voice splintered. She pressed her fist against her lips, as if holding in a scream. They dragged him off. I heard him call for me until the smoke drowned. His voice, and I did nothing. I ran. The confession burned in her throat, shame boiling her blood. Evelyn Harper, who had once been strong enough to leave her life in Missouri and ride west with her husband for a dream of land, was now reduced to begging for death in the desert. The warrior's expression did not shift, but his hand tightened around the shaft of his spear until his knuckles whitened. For a heartbeat, the mask of calm broke, and something flickered in his eyes, something old, something buried, something wounded. My name is Tahu, he said finally, his voice as steady as stone. And I have seen loss greater than yours. Yet here I stand, still breathing, still fighting. Evelyn's lip curled in a bitter half-smile. Then you're stronger than me. I have no fight left. Tahu crouched so that his shadow no longer loomed over her but fell beside her, equal in the dust. His face, weathered by sun and years of hardship, carried no cruelty. Instead, there was something sharper, more dangerous. Truth, you think. You are empty, he said, his voice quieter now, almost like a chant. But the empty are the ones the land calls to fill again. The hawk does not give mercy to the rabbit. The fire does not ask if it should burn the grass. The earth does not care for your sorrow, yet you are still here. You are not ash, not yet. The word struck something inside Evelyn. She did not expect anger. She wanted to scream at him, to curse his calmness, to make him understand that the hollow ache in her chest was not something that could be filled with wise words. What do you want from me? She spat, her voice rising with desperation. Do you want me to crawl in the dust and thank you for denying me? Do you think I can walk another mile in this hell without breaking? I'm telling you, I want the end. Her shout echoed across the barren land, startling a lizard from a nearby rock. The hawk overhead tilted its wings and screamed, as if answering her rage. But Tahu did not flinch. He waited until the echoes died, then leaned closer, his dark hair brushing against the hot breeze. His eyes locked onto hers with a gravity that rooted her to the earth. "No," he said, slow and sharp. "You do not want the end. You want your son. You want the life stolen from you, but the end cannot give it back." Evelyn froze, breath caught in her throat. The truth of his words cut deeper than any blade. For a moment, she saw it her boy's. Small hands, his laugh, the way he used to run barefoot in the fields behind their cabin. The memory gutted her, and tears blurred her vision once more. Tahu stood, his shadow stretching long as the sun bled lower toward the horizon. "You are not weak," he said firmly. "You are wounded. There is difference. A weak heart breaks. A wounded one learns how to heal or how to fight." Evelyn looked up at him, her heart hammering wildly, torn between rage and despair. She wanted to hate him for denying her, for forcing her to confront what she had lost. Yet a small, fragile spark whispered inside her, what if he was right? What if somewhere beyond the dust and fire, her boy still lived, waiting, crying for her? Her! Lips parted, but no words came. Only the hollow rattle of breath and the hot sting of tears. Tiayichu gripped his spear and turned away, scanning the horizon where the faint trail of smoke still marked the raiders passing. "You may die," he said without looking at her. "But—" "Not here. Not by my hand. Not like this." He began to walk, his figure cutting a strong silhouette against the burning sky. Evelyn stared at his back, stunned, furious, bewildered. And for the first time since her world had burned, a thought dangerous and small, but undeniable, took root in her mind. What if he could lead her to her son? That night, the desert breathed differently. The sun had fallen behind the jagged ridges, and with it the heat relented, leaving the air cool and sharp. The stars unfurled across the sky like scattered diamonds, bright enough to paint faint silver. Lines on the canyon walls. A fire flickered between Evelyn and the warrior, small but stubborn, throwing shadows that danced on the rocks. Its crackle was the only sound, save for the whisper of wind carrying the smell of sage. Evelyn sat cross-legged in the dust, hugging her knees close to her chest. Her body was still trembling from exhaustion, but her mind had no rest. She watched the flames leap and fall, and with every lick of fire came memories she had tried to bury. "My name is Evelyn Harper," she said suddenly, her voice thin, almost fragile. She had not spoken her own name in days. It felt foreign. On her tongue, as if she no longer belonged to it. The warrior, who had introduced himself as Tahu, lifted his gaze from the blade he was sharpening. He gave no nod of recognition, no greeting, only silence. Yet there was something in the way. He listened, shoulders stilled, dark eyes fixed, that gave her the courage to continue. "I came here with my husband Daniel and our boy Samuel." The name caught in her throat. She pressed her lips together, swallowing hard before forcing it out. "We wanted land. A place of our own. Missouri was crowded, and the farm never gave enough. Daniel said the West was promise. He said the land would be ours if we worked it." She gave a short, bitter laugh, one that carried no mirth. "We built a cabin. Just 2 rooms, nothing more. Daniel chopped the wood, and I painted the door blue so Sam would always know which house was his. He used to run barefoot through the grass, shouting that he was the fastest rider in all of Arizona, even though he had no horse." Her eyes softened at the memory, but tears quickly blurred it. It was supposed to be our beginning. Her hands dug into the dirt, fingers curling like claws. The fire popped, a spark jumping out and dying at her feet. She didn't notice. Then they came, raiders. Faces covered with cloth, guns spitting fire. Daniel, her voice broke. She bit down hard on her lip, but the words forced their way out. Daniel tried to fight. They shot him. Shot him down like he was nothing. And Sam, my boy, they dragged him screaming. I tried to run after them, but smoke choked me. I fell. When I crawled out, the cabin was gone. Just fire. Just ashes. Her shoulders shook. The tears came hot, streaking through the dust on her face. She hated herself for weeping, hated the weakness it showed, but she couldn't stop. Do you know what it feels like to hear your child cry for you and you can't reach him? You can't. Her words collapsed into sobs. She pressed her forehead to her knees, shaking. The silence that followed was heavy, weighted with her grief. She expected no reply. Tahu was stone, after all silent, unyielding, the desert carved into flesh. Yet when he spoke, his voice was low, softer than she thought it could be. Yes, he said simply. Her head lifted. The single word startled her more than any long speech could. His eyes, reflecting the firelight, carried a depth she had not noticed before. My sister. Tahu continued, his voice even but threaded with something raw. Soldiers came to our village. They took her while the moon was high. She was younger than you are now. They tied her hands, dragged her away. I was too small to stop them. Too small to fight. I never saw her again. The fire crackled between them, but for Evelyn it felt as though something deeper had lit in the night. She saw not just a warrior, but a man bound by the same chain of loss. Her breath hitched. I'm sorry, she whispered, unsure if apology meant anything for pain carved years ago. Tahu did not flinch. His gaze turned to the stars, as though searching for his sister among them. The land takes. It does not ask. It leaves holes where people once stood. His hand pressed to the earth, palm flat, fingers spread, but still the land breathes. And we breathe with it. Until the last breath, there is no end. Evelyn stared at his hand, then at her own trembling fingers. For so long she had believed herself hollow, nothing but a husk waiting to collapse. But Tahu's words carried weight. They carried proof that grief was not only hers to bear. She pulled her knees tighter and whispered to the fire, not to him, not even to herself, but to the night. If my boy still breathes, then maybe I can too. The wind shifted, stirring the flames. Somewhere far off, a coyote howled, lonely and mournful. Evelyn closed her eyes, and for the first time since the cabin burned, she felt something flicker inside her chest. It was not hope not yet, but it was not despair either. It was possibility. The first light of dawn crept across the canyon, painting the rocks in hues of pale gold and rose. The fire had burned down to faint embers, and Evelyn stirred from a shallow, restless sleep. Her body ached, her throat dry, her eyes swollen from tears. For a brief, fragile moment she forgot where she was, expecting to hear her husband's steady voice or her boy's laughter. But when she opened her eyes, there was only the desert, the ash of a dead fire, and the silent warrior sharpening his blade against a flat stone. She pushed herself upright, wincing at the soreness in her legs. A sound of steel against stone filled the still air, rhythmic and unhurried. She thought of the night before, of her confession spilling out in the dark, and her face heated with shame. She had begged for death in front of this man, thrown her weakness at his feet. When she spoke, her voice was rough. If you're going to kill me, you've had plenty of chances. Tahu glanced up from his work, his dark hair falling across his face, then back to the knife. The scrape of stone continued. Evelyn's hands balled into fists. Do it. I asked you for mercy, and mercy means ending this. The warrior did not answer. Instead, he rose, slow and deliberate, and walked toward her. The morning sun caught The muscles of his chest, bronze against the light, scars etched like stories across his skin. His shadow stretched long as he stopped in front of her, knife gleaming in his grip. Evelyn tensed, her breath shallow, waiting. But he did not raise. The blade. He crouched, placed it carefully in the dust before her, and leaned back on his heels. "You want death," he said, his voice calm, measured. "Then take it yourself." Evelyn's eyes darted to the knife. The handle caught the sunlight as if it beckoned her hand. Her heart thundered in her chest. This was what she had asked for. This was the release she had begged for. All she needed to do was reach out, close her fingers, and drive it home. But when her trembling hand stretched toward it, her reflection in the polished steel stopped her. She saw her face dust-stained, tear-streaked, hollow-eyed, but alive. Her son's face flashed in her mind, his dark hair, his laugh, the way he called her Ma with a joy that filled every corner of their cabin. If she took the blade, if she gave in now, who would call for him when he cried in the night? Who would fight for him if there was even the smallest chance he still lived? Her hand hovered. Her breath broke into sobs. And then, with a cry that shook her chest, she let the knife fall back into the dirt. She buried her face in her palms, shaking her head. "I can't," she whispered. "I thought I could, but I can't." When she lifted her gaze again, Tahu had not moved. He watched her with an expression neither triumphant nor mocking, only steady. "Then you are stronger than you believe," he said. Evelyn gave a bitter laugh through her tears. "Strong? I'm broken. I've lost everything. What strength is there in that?" "The strength to choose," Tahu replied. He picked up the knife, sliding it back into its sheath with quiet finality. Then he rose to his full height, his shadow falling across her again. "If you can choose to live, you can choose to fight. And together we will hunt the men who took your boy." Evelyn's mouth opened, but no words came. She stared up at him, her heart pounding. His words landed like a hammer against the wall of her despair, cracking it open just enough for something else to seep through, something she hardly dared name. "Hope. You don't even know me," she whispered. Tahu's dark eyes held hers, steady as stone. "I know loss. I know fire. I know what it means to be left with nothing but anger and dust. That is enough." The canyon was silent again, but not empty. Evelyn felt the weight of his words settle into her bones. She had come to him begging for death, and instead he had given her something far more dangerous. A promise. She swallowed hard, clutching her knees, her voice trembling but firm enough to rise above the silence. "If Samuel's still alive, I will find him. I'll walk through hell to bring him back." Tahu nodded once, slow, like a vow. Then we walked together. The morning sun climbed higher, burning the mist from the air, and Evelyn realized that for the first time since the night her world had burned, she did not feel completely alone. She felt bound not by chains, but by an oath, and oaths, she knew, were harder to break than steel. The storm broke like a gunshot over the canyon, lightning splitting the sky and rattling the stone walls with its echo. Evelyn pressed herself against the jagged rock, heart hammering as hooves clattered in the distance. The warrior's stance did not shift. He remained carved in stillness, spear balanced in his hand, long black hair lashing in the wind like a banner of defiance. "Stay behind me," he said quietly, the words more command than request. His voice carried the weight of centuries. Deep as the thunder rolling above, Evelyn swallowed hard, pressing her back against the cold stone. She wanted to obey, but fear tugged at her, begging her to run, to flee into the maze of shadows. Yet the truth was sharp and merciless without him. She would not last 5 minutes. The riders emerged, 3 shadows on horseback cresting the ridge, their lanterns glowing like devil's eyes in the rain. Evelyn recognized the leader even before the thunder of his boots hit the canyon floor. Sheriff Mallory. His face was hard, soaked beneath the brim of his hat, his jaw clenched like iron. The lawman's revolver gleamed under the stormlight as he raised it. "There she is," he barked, voice slicing through the storm. "Evelyn Harper, by the order of this county, you're under arrest for desertion and attempted murder." Evelyn's breath caught. She knew the accusations were lies, but lies had power when spoken. By men like Mallory. She shook her head, voice breaking. "That's not true." "You know it's not true." Mallory's eyes narrowed, cold and certain. "The jury don't care about truth, girl. They'll care about the story I tell. And you'll hang for it." Lightning flared, and Evelyn flinched at the sight of two more deputies stepping from the shadows with rifles aimed. She wasn't the only one cornered here. The warrior had walked into a trap. The warrior lifted his chin, his expression carved from stone. He said nothing, only adjusted his grip on the spear, the beads and bones of his jewelry rattling softly in the storm. His silence was louder than any gunshot. Mallory spat into the dirt. "And you, savage, this ain't your fight. Step aside, and maybe I'll let you live." The warrior's dark eyes burned, unflinching. "This is my fight now." The words cracked through the canyon like the lightning above. Evelyn felt her throat tighten, her chest ache. He had no reason to defend her, yet here he stood, a wall between her and death. The sheriff smirked, almost pitying. "Then you're a fool." He raised his revolver. What happened next unfolded in a blur of fire and rain. The crack of thunder blended with the blast of Mallory's gun. Evelyn screamed, her hands flying to her mouth, certain the bullet had found its mark. But the warrior moved with impossible speed, twisting as the shot split the air. His spear struck like lightning, shattering the lantern from Mallory's hand and plunging the canyon into near darkness. Gunfire erupted. Sparks lit the storm-soaked rock as bullets struck. Evelyn dropped to the ground, covering her head as the storm and violence blended into chaos. She risked a glance and saw the warrior shirtless and fierce, hair whipping like black fire moving between shadows, his spear an extension of his body. He was faster than the deputies could track. Every movement honed from battles older than this land's towns. One deputy fell with a cry, his rifle clattering on the stone. The second hesitated, fear cutting through his rage as the warrior advanced. Mallory, furious, fired again and again, each shot ricocheting off rock. Evelyn's body trembled. She wanted to run, to scream, but her eyes stayed locked on the man who had chosen to fight for her. She saw not just muscle and strength, but a kind of fury born from loss, something she recognized, because she carried it too. The storm eased. For a moment, rain falling softer, as though the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Mallory stood alone now, his deputies scattered, his revolver empty. He spat into the dirt again, but his confidence cracked at the edges. "You think you saved her?" he hissed. "You've only made it worse. You can't fight the law, savage. You can't fight the world." The warrior's chest heaved, his skin shining in the stormlight. His spear lowered, but his gaze never wavered. "I do not fight the world," he said softly. "I fight for her." The words hit Evelyn like another bolt of lightning. Her heart stumbled, caught between disbelief and something she dared not name. Mallory's eyes narrowed with cold promise. "Then you'll die for her." The storm roared again, thunder swallowing the canyon as the sheriff drew a hidden knife from his belt and charged. Evelyn gasped, frozen, as the world tilted on the knife's edge of fate. The canyon held its breath, shrouded in smoke and mist from the storm, as Evelyn pressed herself against the jagged stone. Her fingers dug into the dirt, knuckles white, as she watched the unfolding chaos. Lightning illuminated the scene in jagged Bursts, revealing the terrified faces of the deputies and the cold fury in the warrior's eyes. Tahu? The warrior moved like a shadow made flesh. Shirtless, bronzed muscles glistening with rain, his long black hair streaming behind him, he was an unstoppable force. Tribal jewelry of beads, bone, and silver jingled softly with each movement, a rhythm that matched the beating of Evelyn's panicked heart. Each step he took was precise, measured, like the swing of a pendulum counting down their survival. Mallory, the sheriff, cursed as he raised his revolver, but his hands shook. The warrior's calm presence was a hurricane that unsettled even the most hardened men. Tahu's spear flashed through the air with deadly accuracy, disarming one deputy before he could fire. Evelyn gasped as the man fell backward, his lantern smashing against the rock, scattering sparks like fireflies into the stormy night. Evelyn's heart pounded against her rib cage. She had imagined this moment countless times, rescuing her son, standing victorious, but reality was sharper, more terrifying than she could have anticipated. She hugged herself, wishing she could be invisible, yet unable to tear her eyes from the warrior's fearless form. Through the chaos, a cry tore from Evelyn's throat. Her son Samuel was bound to a wagon wheel near the center of the canyon. Mud and rain streaked his face, but he was alive, his small body trembling with fear. The sight ignited a spark within her, and she scrambled toward him, her hands shaking. A rifle she had found in the dust pressed tightly against her shoulder. Tahu caught her arm with a gentle but firm grip. "Quiet," he whispered, his voice cutting through the storm. "One mistake, and he dies." Evelyn froze, nodding, her breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. Her fingers clenched the rifle as if it were a lifeline. The storm raged around them, wind whipping their hair, lightning slicing the sky, thunder rattling the canyon walls. It felt as though the world itself were holding its breath, waiting to see which side would fall first. The remaining deputies faltered, confusion and fear overtaking them. They had not anticipated the warrior's skill, his lightning speed, nor the ferocity with which he protected the woman. Tahu moved like a phantom, shirtless, muscles rippling, spear a blur of deadly precision. With a series of swift, deliberate strikes, he disarmed the men, leaving them stumbling and panicked. Evelyn finally risked a glance toward her son. Samuel's eyes widened as he saw her, and he screamed with relief, "Ma!" She lunged forward, tearing the ropes that bound him, holding him close, feeling his small heartbeat hammer against her chest. His arms wrapped tightly around her neck as he sobbed, wet and shivering, but alive. Tahu kept his eyes on the remaining threat, Sheriff Mallory. The man had drawn a hidden knife, his face twisted with anger and desperation. Lightning flared across the sky, illuminating Mallory's snarl and the deadly edge of the blade. Tahu's stance shifted, muscles taut, spear ready. He moved with the lethal grace of a predator, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. Mallory swung wildly, but the warrior sidestepped effortlessly, his body glistening in rain and firelight, and drove the butt of his spear into the man's chest. Mallory stumbled, knife clattering to the rocks, and collapsed onto the wet ground. Evelyn wrapped Samuel closer to her chest, trembling as she realized the danger had passed. She turned to Tahu, the rain plastering his hair to his back, beads and bones glinting like war trophies, and she saw not just strength, but something gentler, a protector, a savior, a man who had chosen her life over her death. The storm began to ease, the wind softening, the first light of dawn spilling into the canyon. Evelyn's body ached from fear and exhaustion, but she felt something she had not felt in months, relief. And hope. Tahu crouched beside her, still vigilant, spear at the ready. "He will not harm you again," he said quietly. "And your boy is safe." Evelyn gazed at her son, then at the warrior, her voice trembling. You saved us. Both of us. Tahu shook his head, dark eyes unwavering. No, you chose life when you put down the knife. You saved yourself. And your boy. I only showed the path. For the first time since that fateful night, Evelyn Harper let herself breathe fully. Her son was alive, the storm was ending, and somewhere deep in her chest, a fragile spark of something long-lost strength, hope, perhaps even trust began to glow again. As the sun rose, illuminating the canyon in golden light, Evelyn realized something remarkable. She had faced death, begged for it, and survived, not because someone granted it, but because she had chosen life. And life, she knew, could be more dangerous and more beautiful than she had ever imagined. The storm had passed, leaving the canyon wet and shimmering under the first golden rays of sunlight. Mist hovered low over the rocky floor, curling around puddles and slick stone like smoke from a distant fire. Evelyn Harper clutched Samuel to her chest, the boy trembling but alive. She had expected exhaustion, relief, but what washed over her now was something more profound. Awe at the man who had saved them both. Tahu stood a few feet away, spear planted in the ground, shirtless, muscular, his long black hair damp and clinging to his bronzed skin. The beads and bone of his tribal jewelry rattled softly with the breeze, catching the rising sun and scattering tiny sparks of light. His dark eyes scanned the canyon, ever vigilant, though the immediate threat was gone. Evelyn's chest ached. With gratitude and something else she hadn't named, an unsteady trust that had grown in the crucible of fire, blood, and rain. She forced herself to speak, voice trembling. I don't even know how to thank you. You saved my son. And me. You risked everything. Tahu shook his head slowly, muscles rippling beneath glistening skin. I only followed the path. You chose. You put down the knife. You chose life, Evelyn. I only protected the choice you made. Evelyn knelt, pressing Samuel against her chest again, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. But without you, she trailed off, unable to finish. He approached, each step measured, deliberate, powerful. Evelyn felt the ground shift beneath the weight of his presence. No one survives the desert alone, he said quietly. Some paths are too cruel for one person, others too dark. But together there is a chance, and your boy, he deserves that chance. Evelyn swallowed hard, eyes tearing as sunlight glinted off the warrior's skin. She had begged for death, begged for release, and he had denied her in the most powerful way by forcing her to see that life was still possible. Her own courage, her own love for her child, had been her saving. Samuel stirred in her arms, small fingers brushing Tahu's forearm. The boy's eyes widened, curiosity and trust mingling in his gaze. Evelyn smiled through her tears. He's okay, she whispered. Because of you. Tahu crouched, coming to Samuel's level. You are strong, he said gently. Voice deep and steady. Brave, even when afraid. Samuel's small hand reached out, brushing one of the warrior's long black locks. For a moment, the canyon was silent except for the soft drip of rain from rocks and the distant cry of a hawk circling above. Evelyn's gaze shifted to the horizon, where the desert plains stretched endlessly, gold and copper in the morning light. They had survived the storm, the men who sought to harm them, the endless cruelty of chance, but there was still a long road ahead. Tahu straightened, muscles taut, spear ready, but he looked at her differently now, not only as a woman he protected, but as someone who had endured, survived, and proven her strength. The desert is unforgiving, he said. It tests everyone who walks across it, but it also gives what we earn. It gives second chances. Evelyn's chest tightened with hope and something heavier, resolve. Then we'll take that chance, she said, determination threading her voice. Together, we'll find a place where we can live safely, and my son. He'll grow up knowing there's more to this world than just fire and loss." Tahu nodded once, sharp, certain. "Then, let us walk the path ahead." As the sun climbed higher, illuminating every crevice of the canyon, Evelyn felt the weight of despair lifting. Samuel nestled into her side, warm and safe. And for the first time since that night when her world had burned, she could breathe fully. The storm had passed, not only the literal one, but the storm in her heart. She glanced at the warrior, shirtless, bronzed, powerful, his long black hair damp and shimmering, tribal jewelry catching the sun, and realized something she hadn't known she needed: trust. Not blind trust, but a bond forged in fire, sweat, and survival. He had shown her the way, and now she could walk it. The canyon stretched before them, vast and endless, but Evelyn no longer felt lost. With Tahu by their side, spear in hand, and her son safe, she understood the truth the warrior had taught her. Life was worth fighting for, and sometimes the strongest hearts are those that refuse to give up even when death seems certain. She let a breath escape, deep and steady, and for the first time smiled. The horizon glowed with promise. And in that moment, Evelyn Harper knew their story had only just begun.